This is the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Your hosts are Seth Jacobson and Patrick Heilar.
Hi, I'm Seth.
And I'm Patrick. Chapter 32, A Short Spear.
Which, come on. They just had igloo sex and you're calling it a short spear? Damn. Listen, it's cold, okay? It's an igloo!
So much about this, initial, their, first hookup is so brutal and tough. They finish and get up, and she's like, that's not going to happen again. Damn, dude. She literally says that.
Yeah, that's rough.
Of course it isn't true, but,
Well, yeah. Well, for a while it's true. Until she gets, offers Elaine her fucking throat.
Oh, it's so cringy and awkward. And then, at the end of this chapter, when they finally make it back to, what is it called? Sienda, the town that they're in, I think. They get back into Rand's room, and, they realize that the night has passed, and there's only a couple of hours until dawn, and Rand says something like, if you're, I'm probably not going to sleep, so if you're trying to sleep, maybe, go somewhere else. And she's like, yeah, fine, bye, and slams the door. Wow. Oh, it's real awkward.
But she has you have to understand, she's violated toe. She has toe towards Elaine. She is now has enough toe that, she has given her life to Elaine. She has violated her oath to protect Rand and keep an eye on him. And now...
Seemed like he was pretty well protected to me.
Yeah. Jesus.
I actually legitimately kind of wanted to bring that up while we were talking about this chapter, which we'll actually break into shortly, that I kind of found myself wondering how much of Avienda's honor is she just making this up? You know what I mean? She didn't say, I'll make sure he doesn't sleep with anyone. She just said, I'll look after him. Is that...
for you.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like she's kind of grasping here.
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind that Avienda is blowing it way out of proportion, right?
She's making up a reason to beat herself up.
They say Maiden's honor is prickly, and Avienda's honor is the prickliest of them all. So I totally believe that she is overreacting. However, she is very much in a bind.
Yeah, that's a tough situation to put you and your friend in, but also, he's not Elaine's. Who knows if they'll even see each other again at this point?
Yeah, that's a good point. He does even say that, we kissed a couple of times in a corridor, we're not engaged or anything.
Yeah.
And then she gave me these stupid letters, which I don't understand, and one of which tells me, she loves me, and the other one says I'm a wool-headed idiot, so as you know, both are true. She loves the wool-headed idiot. It's a little overblown. But Avienda only sees two ways out of it. Either she gives her life to Elaine and Elaine gets to kill her, or she becomes First Sisters. And as far as she knows, based on Egwene's answer, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, Sakan makes a good point that in Aiel culture, once a woman has expressed interest in him, that gives her sort of the rights. And the man has no say in it. So it's also an Aiel culture thing that Avienda feels that she has to make way for Elaine, because Elaine has already expressed that interest.
That's true. That's a good explanation. The way I'm perceiving it is just I don't know, my culture.
No, it's very much an Aiel cultural thing.
Which is, unless you specifically made some kind of an agreement, then there's no agreement, so,
Well, and I think that there are other Aiel with other opinions as well. The other thing that you have to remember about Avienda is she is terrible with boys. She is grown up as a maiden. She's never even thought about boys. She was wedded to the spear, and then all of a sudden, as this adult, attractive woman, she's like, oh my god, I have to, deal with these feelings that I never thought I had to deal with, that I've never had to deal with before. And, she may be just a little immature and slightly overreacting. Add in the Aiel honor stuff, it's just...
That's a good point, too, that...
It's a stewing nightmare in her head. I would not want to be there.
Young woman. What is she, 18, 19, something like that? Basically, she went from childhood to, joining an exclusively female military unit. So how much time has she actually spent with men at all? In a romantic sense, at least.
Yeah, I mean, she can't be that old because she has the spark, and that usually comes out like around 18. And yeah, her whole, like, probably from 13 on, she's spent being trained to fight. Because he was born in 82, she's born in 80, so she's 2 years older than Rand.
What year is it? No, what year is it in Fires of Heaven? I thought it was 99...
Oh, 98, shoot. Yeah, I'm getting my... It's 98, 99, so she's 19 then.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, Rand was born in 78, not 82. Gotcha. I got that backwards. I know he's 2 years off 80, but sometimes it's only like I was a math teacher for a couple of years. You know what? Getting your signs wrong is just a mistake anyone can make. Okay, so she is 2 years younger than Rand. She's 19, he's 21, now that we're in 999, because the series started in 998, but we're a year and a half past that.
Yeah, that does kind of put a lot of these relationships into a bit of context. I mean, relationships are fraught anyway all the time, but, like, these people are barely adults, and they've never done this before. It would be, my first couple of relationships did not go terribly well, but that's kind of the point of dating. You need practice, man. It's complicated stuff.
I also kind of feel like an old man sitting here being like, at 35, 38, fuck. These young kids, whippersnappers, don't know what they're doing. Where was that fucking 1918? I knew everything.
Oh, yeah, well, that's one of the problems with that age. I was reflecting on that recently. There's a time in my life where I was, like, pretty sure I was actually invincible. Like, I couldn't be hurt. Definitely don't feel that way anymore. I'm, like, negotiating healthcare prices. All right. We actually came here today to talk about Chapter 32 of the Fires of Heaven, A Short Spear. And our symbol is the Shanshan helmet.
I think that's pretty obvious because we're ending up in Shanshan land with, a spear that gets cut in half when it goes through the gateway.
Yeah, about to see some Shanshan helmets.
Also, I mean, do you think Jordan was being a little facetious with the title A Short Spear?
I think maybe, because the Aiel have quote-unquote short spears, but I think more like a javelin. And this is like that, but cut into, what is it supposed to be, like a 1.5 2 foot length?
Scepter, yeah. Scepter length.
There was little discussion. Even if the storm still raged outside, they could make it back to the gateway using the blankets and rugs for cloaks. Avienda began dividing them while he seized Saidin, filling himself with life and death, molten fire and liquid ice. Split them equally, he told her. He knew his voice was cold and emotionless. Asmodean had said he could go beyond that, but he had not managed to so far. She gave him a surprised look, but all she said was, "There's more of you to cover," and went on as she was. There was no point in arguing. In his experience, from Emond's Field to the Maidens, if a woman wanted to do something for you, the only way to stop her was to tie her up, especially if it involved sacrifice on her part. The surprise was that she had not sounded acid, had not said anything about him being a soft wetlander. Maybe something good besides a memory had come out of this. She can't really mean never again. He suspected that she meant exactly that, though. Weaving a finger-thin flow of fire, he sliced the outline of a door in one wall, widening the gap at the top. Startlingly, daylight shone through. Releasing Saidin, he exchanged surprised looks with Avienda. He knew he had lost track of time. He lost track of the year. But they could not have been inside that long. Wherever they were, it was a great distance from Cairien. He pushed against the block, but it did not budge until he put his back to it, dug in his heels, and shoved with all of his might, just as it occurred to him that he very probably could have done this more easily with the power. The block toppled outward, taking him with it into cold, crisp, pale daylight. Not all the way, though. It stopped at an angle, propped against snow that had built up around the hut. Lying on his back, with only a bit of his head sticking out, he could see other mounds, some smooth drifts around sparse, stunted trees that he did not recognize. Others maybe burying bushes or boulders. He opened his mouth and forgot what he was going to say as something swept through the air not 50 feet above him, a leathery gray shape far bigger than a horse. On slow-beating, widespread wings, a horny snout thrust out before, and clawed feet and thin, lizard-like tail trailing behind, his head twisted on its own to follow the thing's flight over the trees. There were 2 people on its back, despite what seemed to be some sort of hooded garments. It was plain that they were scanning the ground below. If he had had more than his head showing, if he had not been directly under the creature, they would surely have seen him. That's how we know we're in Shanshan. Or that's the first hint.
That must have been probably just a rockin', not a toe rockin'.
Yeah, there's only 2 on its back. But we know when Rand and Avienda run into the group of Shanshan later, they say it was sensed when Avienda channeled in the night. So searchers are out looking for this Marith domain.
That gateway must have been really powerful.
Yeah, it takes a lot of power. We know it takes a lot of power to make a gateway.
Right, so you can sense that from far away, and they must have had patrols out. Because this is the beach, right there, not far away from the ocean. And as we see, they must have traveled significantly far to the west, so that now there is the ocean, I believe it's the Aerith Ocean that they travel, is now they're just on the other side of it. So now the ocean's on the east side of them, whereas before it was on the west side of the coast. So they must know they're like on a whole different continent. Also, there's enough of a time shift that the daylight is like a couple of hours different. It's about 2 hours different, I think, is what they say, at least.
Yeah. Through Rand's perspective, we get a rough description of the kind of lay of the land around them. I tried to think of how to pinpoint it, but there's really no way. Shanshan's a huge continent. They could be, far to the north or far to the south. We don't know.
And we don't know what the ocean currents would do to the temperature and the various...
altitude and stuff. They could be on top of a mountain. Maybe that's why it's...
Mm-hmm. But the only thing we can tell for sure is that they are on the east coast of the Shanshan continent.
Yeah.
But clearly it's in a highly patrolled area. There's people flying overhead. There's people close enough to sense a gateway, which, despite being a lot of power, you still have to be pretty close. If you're in the middle of the wilderness, like, you have to be within a couple of miles. And that's, in the wilderness, that's a lot of people. Doesn't seem like they're near civilization at all.
We certainly never see any.
Mm-hmm.
But also, when we talk to the Shanshan or hear them talking a bit later, even amongst themselves, we find out, I think it's described that there's been sedition in this district. So there's like political problems and military movements and, things are happening. So maybe, even though this is the middle of nowhere, it's kind of has a lot of attention on it right now.
Gotcha. They just happened to pick a bad place. I looked up all the names of the nobles and the seeker that we find out here, and as far as I can tell, we never get any more information about what happens to them in particular. They never show up again, and Semrog is never like, and I killed this person, that doesn't happen. So I wasn't able to get any like follow-up information to see like maybe we could find out what country they were in or something like that, but nope, nothing like that.
Yeah, we do find out that one of the Suldam was at Falma. She recognizes Rand.
Mm-hmm. Sort of an internal power play among the nobles and the Seekers.
Yeah, a thing happens. It's kind of cool.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
When he says, Asmodean had said he could go beyond that, but he had not managed so far, does he mean he can go beyond having a cold affect and appear to have emotion? Or he can... I wasn't really sure what he meant in that. It's like in the first paragraph.
Oh, I thought... I assumed that meant deeper, like maybe not even feel emotions at all. Like when we see Rand say, like, a thought skittered across the edge of the void, Like he knows he would feel angry. Maybe you can go deeper than that and not feel anything at all? That's a good question, though.
Yeah, I can kind of buy that. I think of it sort of as his process of turning to Quendiar and just getting harder and harder and harder.
Yeah, I actually highlighted that a bunch in this chapter because Rand keeps thinking about it. Like, I have to be tougher. I have to be harder.
And we see Lanfear talk about living in the oneness all the time and how you will adapt to it. And like, I have to wonder if maybe that's just not a way for the Forsaken to be immoral and not deal with their own feelings of being terrible, terrible people, because they just constantly are in a state of disconnected oneness.
That's an interesting point. Shield yourself from yourself.
Mm-hmm. And just always be ready. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they can also embrace side R, side in very quickly, is that they're always just on that verge of, they're already in the void.
Yeah, so your reaction time's better, your thoughts are clear.
Mm-hmm.
I see why you might want to live like that, but the no emotions thing seems problematic.
Only if you're not one of the chosen.
Avienda and Rand move across a big field of snow, basically, back toward where the gateway still hangs open. Rand put a weave there to hold it open from closing.
And then Asmodean masked it to prevent anyone from seeing it.
Yeah, it's, I think, only on the Rand land side.
Asmodean side, yeah, totally.
But it appears, like, weird on this side, Rand thinks.
It's obscured, so you can't, like, see through it. So the Seanchan have no idea they're like, what is this gateway with a opaque surface? Like, they don't really know what it is, so they don't go through it.
Yeah.
But that could have been a problem if they had.
As Rand and Avienda, they're trying to, like, sneak across this plain because Rand knows that people might be watching from above, or this plain of snow, I guess I should say. They see this group of Seanchan standing around studying the gateway. So they're kind of crouched for a moment and like, oh shit, what do we do?
I like, there's a pure white fox, just like a snow fox with a black tip on its tail.
Oh yeah, there's a kind of a pretty scene that...
There's this like snowy beach and crashing waves and this fox. There's just a lot of things that are like... Obviously, most foxes would be red in where he's used to, and then he sees this white fox in the snow. I like all the various world building that, like, we're not here for very long, but we get a bunch of stuff about what Seanchan is like, what the continent itself is like, and what the wildlife is like.
RJ's good at the nature scenes, and Rand sees the tracks of a big cat.
Snow leopard.
But Rand quickly gets the idea to shield the female channelers. There's two Soldam paired with their Domine. That's how I say that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Domine? Domine?
Damane?
Damane? Damn it. Okay, well.
The leashed ones.
Yeah.
The leash holders and the leashed ones. There's two pairs. And Avienda, interestingly, immediately senses that the leash holders can channel, which I thought was... interesting that she can like tell that they can channel but don't practice it.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting. Her description, or what she says to Rand, is, "The women with the bracelets can channel also," she replied just as softly. "It feels very strange though, weak, as if they had never practiced it. I cannot see how that can be." Which I think is her Aiel culture blinding her a little bit. She doesn't understand how someone couldn't have been trained.
Well, she doesn't understand how you can touch it without being trained. You know, she's
right.
like, if you know, like, how do you even establish that connection if you don't practice? And it's by using someone else to practice, establishing the connection through somebody else. And Rand knows enough about what they do and how they do it that he knows immediately, like, these are... Well, actually, he doesn't know that the Suldam are channelers. Avienda informs him of that.
I think that may be right.
I also like the way he imprisons everybody, is instead of trying to split his flows a bunch of different ways, he literally just makes like one super, super, super long flow that he wraps around everybody.
Yeah, I've had the thought that I may have misspoke before, where they see the Seanchan and they're like, oh geez, what do we do? No, they figure out pretty fast what to do. And also Rand and Avienda are two of like the most powerful channelers we meet. Or that at least very powerful channelers. They don't have much trouble. And Avienda, in her bit of ignorance, Rand asks, is it possible for you to shield all four of the channelers just in case? And Avienda says basically, yes, of course I can do that.
Don't teach your grandmother to suck eggs, you know? You're like...
And she does.
She's got no problem.
But she's like, says basically, yes, I can do that, but that'll be the limit. So what about all the soldiers? And Rand says, I'll handle that.
What's interesting to me, though, is how quickly Avienda's come along. That, like, it wasn't that long ago, I mean, last book, that we saw her, like, toss her first fireball, and now she's effortlessly shielding 4 channelers. It's kind of impressive.
Rediscovering gateways.
Yeah, we don't talk much about how skilled she must be with the one power.
Falaran, I think that's right. She only started getting trained like a few months back, basically on on returning to the waste. So when Rand gets there.
Yeah, because she goes through the rings with Moraine.
Yeah, basically the same time.
But also, Avienda's been one of the things she says is, Egwene taught me how to do this.
Mm-hmm. How to split flows like that.
How to split flows. So she's been studying with Aes Sedai and Wise Ones, basically getting training from both, even though, yes, I know, not technically Aes Sedai, but...
Yeah, super intensive training.
Totally. And as we know, Aiel are really good at, you remember the lecture first time, or else we beat the shit out of you.
Yeah,
so.
Literally.
They're very good at learning things without repetition.
And we know both Avienda and Rand are what are sometimes called fast learners in the fan community. Like, they can see a weave and repeat it.
Sure.
Whereas some people have to work for a long time to be able to do that.
Yeah, it seems to be associated mostly with power level, but it certainly... There's even powerful people that don't have it, so it's not totally linked. But and because there's also, I feel like, some weak channelers who have the ability to pick up weaves quickly.
Oh, I can think of one good example. Gosh, the wise one.
Cerelia.
Yeah, Cerelia.
She is very good at picking up weaves, but not that powerful. So that's where it makes me think it's more of a force of will thing?
Maybe. I wouldn't put it past her. But she can kind of... there's a couple of instances where she reconstructs something complex, but makes it tiny, because that's all she can do.
Or doesn't she, show people how to make gateways, but she can't actually, construct, make it come together herself?
I wanted to say that, but I can't remember the specific scene. Can anyone call us out on that? Did that happen? Am I making that up?
I mean, if you did, we both made it up, so...
Okay.
Shared delusions. Here we come.
In any case, moving forward, Rand binds the soldiers and everyone, while Avienda shields the channelers, and they just walk right up.
I think a bit of Ta'Veren twisting, right? Rand is the plow, and he's just upsetting everybody's lives. And through this one chance encounter, he totally... this is just a group of people out riding, and he reveals secrets of Lady Morsa that get her and the Soldam taken by the Seekers as prisoners and put basically to torture just by his presence being there.
Yeah. Because we see in a moment as they approach after all of the clamor, Mareth Damane, oh no! And the Damane are crying, and there's this whole big scene. It is he, Lady Morsa, the other Damani Soldam said suddenly in a soft drawl that Rand could barely understand. In fact, there seemed to be a light of horrified recognition in her blue eyes as she gazed at Rand. There was only one way that could be. You were at Falma, he said. I was. The noblewoman looked faint. I saw you, and what you did. And he says, take care I don't do the same here. Give me no trouble, and I'll leave you in peace. As if he could repeat that.
Well, no, but I mean, in a lot of ways, Rand is way more powerful now than he was at Falma. At Falma, he was just a shepherd with a horn and a sword. He just fought Baalzamon in the sky, but that was just the horn supporting him, and then it was just a sword fight, basically. Whereas now, he is a pretty proficient channeler, having been trained by the Forsaken himself and expanded out his abilities and power. So, totally different. He might not be able to call back the Hunters of the Horn, but I guarantee he could decimate the Shan-Chan in the area.
He sure does a pretty good job later, fighting Shan-Chan.
Well, when he hits the Shan-Chan and not his own people.
Yeah.
That's a Kalimdor flaw.
Nodding.
Because he goes a little crazy when he doesn't realize that he's attacking his own people.
In this scene is what we were talking about before, where this Lady Morsa recognizes Rand because she was at Falma, and we see another of the Shan-Chan here say, much has been kept secret about what happened in the lands of the Great Hawkwing, Lady Morsa. I believe it's the Seeker that's there. Rumors fly that the ever-victorious army has tasted defeat.
Which was, yeah.
And Morsa says, the Seeker above all should know when to keep silent. And the Seeker is like, oh, no. You don't tell me what to do, and it turns into this whole thing. She just told a Seeker that she has a secret about the ever-victorious army and what happened in Randland. That doesn't go so well for her. Even though they're all restrained, the Seeker announces her arrest, and that she'll be put to the question.
Oops.
Her and all the other women there, the channelers.
You pissed that Seeker off, man. He was not taking any shit.
They don't.
No, they don't.
It's hardcore people.
And we actually get confirmation. We've heard it described that occasionally when a male gets the bracelet snapped on his wrist, both he and the women die screaming. And when Rand touches the bracelet, we see that same effect, which is clearly because he's a man who can channel. And that, I think it was speculation before, but here's more evidence that if a man who can channel touches the bracelet, the feedback loop kills them both, because it essentially forces them into a circle. It just tries to force the male into a female circle in a way that he doesn't fit. And so I feel like it just creates this feedback loop that destroys both of them.
Yeah, we see that when Rand he wants to free the Damane, not really understanding that they won't go even if they are freed. But, he sees them as slaves, as unwilling slaves, so he tries to, and he touches the bracelet and realizes he can't. Tries to get Aviendha to release them, but she can't figure it out, and they end up having to go. The gateway is slowly closing.
And there was that one Damane that Nynaeve freed who, punched her soul dom and ran away in Falma, I think.
But she was recently captured.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point. Oh, in real-time follow-up, the scene where Sorelia was doing the gateway, it was where she was showing Cadsuane the weave for traveling, and she couldn't make it, but she could show Cadsuane how to do it. And that was sort of part of when they sort of made an alliance to, show Rand how to cry again. That was part of their bargain. Their gift she gave is sort of a bridge to friendship.
I feel validated now. That did happen. Good. He says, the Empress, in gratitude for the confession I wrenched from them, her own children, she allowed me to gaze upon her, which is a great honor. When I was reading that, I kind of wanted to bring up, as we were talking about this, because my first thought was, man, that Empress, a lot of kids. And then I realized, but to be related to the Empress, you don't, that's a position you can be promoted to. It's like a CEO.
That is a good point.
Yeah. So I think some of them are definitely her true children, like Tuon, but some of them probably aren't. Some of them are probably just distinguished individuals. Maybe
she dropped a nail at their feet by accident. Became adopted. I'm not really sure what the protocol is. Because remember, if you get tattooed with the wrong thing, you become property. You and the rest of your family forever become property. Don't mess that tattoo up. Can you imagine getting drunk and waking up and, your friends having played a prank on you? It's like, ha, we played a prank. You're now property for the rest of your life.
Well, not so funny, I guess.
I would be like, sure, let's cover that up with a dragon head real quick.
I mean, it depends on your job, I guess. Some of the Empress's slaves are considered much higher than a lot of the nobility.
And I think once we speculated that the whole idea that none of the Seekers have ever betrayed the Empress might be because they've been bound with some sort of ter'angreal, and the mark is the tower and raven on the shoulders. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I like that idea. We've definitely put forward the theory that the Crystal Throne is a ter'angreal. And I've called it, the chair binding. What if one of the things that binds, that they do, is use the Empress's voice to say, you will protect me, and they're bound by that, and then they get the tattoo of the raven in the tower. Yeah. And that's how they become Seekers. And they can't physically, the way the Aes Sedai can't betray their oaths because they are bound. The Seekers, I believe, can't betray their oaths because they are bound by the Crystal Throne. I like the theory, at least, and it explains how this one person can maintain power over such a large continent. Mm-hmm. And why holding the Crystal Throne has always been considered so very important. The whole thing about not speaking. And also, how do you maintain control over all the Soul Dom and Domine? Well, what if you can bind them to your will? That's a bit of a stretch, though. Because I think the binding chair was designed to work on non-channelers. So maybe you have, the binding chair for non-channelers, the Seekers, and then you have just the whole process of Soul Dom and Dominate to dominate the channelers. Nodding to that. Event happen amongst the Shan-Chan, so while they're bound, they're not arguing, but they're arguing. Seeker realizes they have information they're not supposed to, and so their arrest is announced even though no one can move.
One of them tries to tell Rand that, like, hey, you should stay. Powerful guy like you could find a place here. And Rand's like, yeah, calls bullshit on it. Nope, you're just going to kill me.
Well, when she says you can find great honor in the use of your power, I think the honor is the honor of being killed.
Oh, I misunderstood.
Your sufferings can be eased. Here you can find great honor in the use of your power. And he knows in Seanchan, men who could channel were killed, not executed, hunted down, and shot on sight. So there is no way that she is actually offering him a position. He would be just killed.
Oh, I just thought she was trying to be deceptive to get out of this.
But I think she's being deceptive with, like, I said I words, which is basically saying, we will ease your suffering.
Yeah. Put you out of your misery is what that means.
Gotcha. Yeah, exactly.
They spent some time fiddling with the bracelets, the Adam, to try to free the Domine. Rand realizes he can't do it, tries to get Avienne to do it, and she fiddles with them for a while, but can't figure it out.
She doesn't know the trick, because she wasn't in Falma.
The gateway's slowly closing, so they jump through. Which
is a risk, because of the weave that Asmodean put up, he doesn't know what's on the other side. But he correctly assumes that it's just a disguise.
Yeah, safer than staying, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, because the whole reason that he's even threatened is that he releases the weave when he goes through, which, is a very magnanimous thing to do. Because if he just, left it tied off, he would never have been threatened by the spear at all. It wouldn't have been a risk to him. And so by letting them free, by basically letting them survive and letting them take care of themselves, he's putting a great risk to himself, which Codswain would smack him up the head for. Boy, you're more valuable than that, than a couple of Seanchan soldiers. Let them die.
Yeah, it is very generous, unforgiving thing for him to do. And we see he and Avienne have a conversation about it. Rand doesn't want to leave them tied there because they're knee-deep in snow in the mountains, and he's like, if I leave them tied, they're all going to freeze to death out here. He doesn't feel good about doing that. Although, when he says that to Avienne, she's like, you didn't leave it? She's like, I tied those...
They won't be channeling for a long time.
Yeah, I tied all that off.
Yeah, unless they find someone to cut the shield. They ain't... Which is, at least they can get back to civilization. They can walk, but they won't be able to channel for a while.
She says, I tied their shields as tightly as I could. They are your enemies, Rand al'Thor. Even the ones called Damane are faithful dogs who would have killed you rather than be free. You must be hard with your enemies, not soft. And then over the next page, I underlined a couple of times that he thinks, yes, he had to become harder. He had to be hard. Mm-hmm. It repeats over and over. I feel like this is the beginning of that. This is the genesis of Darth Rand.
Hopper Lives has a question. Doesn't the tie off erode over time? And I think it does, but the tighter you tie it, the less erosion you get. So I'm guessing she's saying I tied it off as tight as I could because I want them to be shielded for as long as I possibly can. Get them to be shielded. I'm not going to let them free not a second sooner than I possibly can. But I do think the shield will erode over time, but it may be months or even years with as tight as Avienne ties things off. She also seems to have a way with weaves. She's able to pick apart gateways. She seems to be able to tie things off really tightly.
Hey, Hopper Lives, by the way. She's my friend from work and the wine shop next door. I see her around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Have I met Hopper Lives?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, geez. We need to rectify that with a bottle of wine.
It's a nice place. It's a nice place to hang out. Cool people.
Yeah, I kind of there's those nice little benches outside that Timber likes to hop up on, and
yeah, I definitely get sucked in the summer. It's hard to leave, especially when I finish work. I'm like, well, maybe one glass of wine, and it's never one.
I've stopped trying to be like, in the summer, I was like, you know what, Patrick, I'm not going to schedule any recordings after work. Because Patrick would be like, oh, I had a couple too many drinks today. Like, oh yeah, that happens. Because it's so nice out there. It's just sit down, have some wine, have a couple of more.
Oh yeah, and the free drink at the end of your shift when you work in a restaurant is it's such a trap. Because once I have one beer, it's like, well, what's another? And once I have 3 beers, it's like, well, my day's over.
See, I'm not sure if this is evidence for or against big eyes and round bosoms. Bosom. How do you say that word?
Bosom.
Bosom.
It is spelled bosom.
It is spelled bosom.
Yeah.
That the round, god damn it, bosom. The round bosom caught your eye. That this girl has both. So I don't know if that's evidence for or against the fact that big eyes and big boobs are the same thing. That she has both. You could say, oh, well, that's just, therefore correlation. She's just basically saying the same thing twice. Or you could say, oh, she's differentiating between those two.
The narration definitely uses big eyes at the very least to denote an attractive quality.
Yes, big-eyed. I mean, it's like every time he says big eyes, I have to think like an anime character. Just like a big-eyed...
A bit. I mean, I kind of get it,
Just seems like an odd way to describe. Again, I don't know if I already said this on recording, but someone was questioning why the phrase crossing your arms beneath your breasts is sexist. And they turned it around and said, well, what if it was crossing your arms above your penis?
I never thought about it.
You don't really have to specify. You just have to say cross your arms.
You've said that to me before. I don't know if you've said it on recording, but it is kind of a weird thing to, where else would you cross your arms, I mean...
Right. Over your breasts? That doesn't make any sense. Is that even
possible? I guess so.
I guess, yeah, it would be, but it would be kind of awkward.
Pretty awkward, yeah.
It's like that thing where you stick your hands in your armpits instead of crossing your arms. Balron says, it looks and feels weird. I will take your word for it.
Right after Avienda's acid comment about that whey-faced Morsa.
I mean, this is clear jealousy, right? Clearly she's not giving up the protecting Rand from other women.
She's acting really weird, but, she did just say, they literally got up right after, and she was like, well, that's not going to happen again. Dude, that's brutal. Even if you know, why say it,
Oh, top 10 worst things to say after sex. That's never going to happen again.
Ooh, I regret that. Wow, damn.
You remind me of my mother.
But right after that, we basically, it's revealed that the weird weave over the gateway was, as we said, Asmodean masking or making it invisible on that side. And I think I'll just read this little paragraph or two because it's funny. That was a smart thing you did, she said, hiding the hole I made. If a Gaishane had come in here, 1,000 of the Spear Sisters might have marched through, seeking you. Asmodean cleared his throat. One of the Gaishane did come. Someone named Sulan had told her she must see you eat, my Lord Dragon, and to stop her from bringing the tray in here and finding you gone, I took the liberty of telling her that you and the young woman did not want to be disturbed. A slight tightening of his eyes caught Rand's attention. What? I think Rand says. Just that she took it strangely. She laughed out loud and went running off. A few minutes later, there must have been 20 Fardaris Mai beneath the window, shouting and beating their spears on their bucklers for a good hour or more. I must say, my Lord Dragon, some of the suggestions they called up startled even me.
As I said, the maidens are celebrating them banging by banging the spears on the bucklers.
Rand felt his cheeks burning. It had happened on the other side of the bloody world, and still, the maidens knew.
They kind of assumed, but yep. Yeah, that's really funny. I want to bring up two things. First of all, Avienda talks about her first sister, Niella, which is her actual blood relative, right? The daughter of her mother. And looks like her, like she has a sister, right? And this is a blood sister that really never gets mentioned again. Sort of just a throwaway line, as far as I can tell. You can adapt someone as first sister? Adopt. Not adapt. You can adopt someone as first sister, but it's someone you're born to the same mother with is your first sister.
Gotcha.
The fact that they look the same makes me think that they're from the same mother. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is just Rand is not very subtle here in front of Avienda when he turns to Asmodean and is like, thanks for hiding my gateway. I wonder what Avienda's thinking there, because she thinks he's just a bard.
I didn't even catch that.
So, I mean, she's in the room. She's right there with him. She doesn't say anything about it. I think she gets distracted by the being embarrassed by the maidens. But that was a smart thing you did, she said. Oh, shoot. I thought that was Rand saying that. Okay.
Oh, yeah, she said.
That was a smart thing you did, she said, hiding the hole I made.
Oh, well.
So she thinks Rand did it. Got it. So completely ignore everything I just said. I mistook that as he said, not she said. So, never mind.
He said, she said. I'm going to extend this a little bit because it's that other super cringy moment that I was talking about at the end of this. We're talking about there's only 2 hours left till dawn. And Rand says, so there will be little sleeping now. If you want to try, would you mind making your bed elsewhere for what's left of the night? You need new blankets anyway. She nodded curtly before pulling loose and slammed the door behind her. Surely she was not angry at being tossed out of his bedchamber. How could she be? She had said nothing more would happen between them.
Oh, she's pissed.
But he was glad he was not Niella. Bouncing the shortened spear in his hand, he turned to Asmodean. A strange scepter, my lord dragon. It will do for one, to remind him that the Shanshan were still out there. For once he wished his voice was even colder than the void and Sidene made it. He had to be hard. Before I decide whether to skewer you with it like a lamb, why did you never mention this trick of making something invisible? If I hadn't been able to see the flows, I'd never have known a gateway was still there. Asmodean swallowed, shifting as though he did not know whether Rand meant his threat. Rand was not sure himself. My lord dragon, you never asked. A matter of bending light. You always have so many questions. It is hard to find a moment to speak of anything else. You must realize by now that I've thrown my lot in with yours completely. Licking his lips, he got up, as far as his knees, and began to babble. I felt your weave. Anybody within a mile could have felt it. I never saw anything like it. I didn't know that anyone but Demandred could block a gateway that was closing, and maybe Semerhag, and Luz Theron. I felt it, and came, and a hard time I had getting past those maidens. I used the same trick. You must know I am your man now. My lord dragon, I am your man. It was the repetition of what the Kyrianan had said that got through as much as anything else. Gesturing with the half-spear, he said roughly, Stand. You aren't a dog. But as Asmodean slowly rose, he laid the long spear point alongside the man's throat. He had to be hard. From now on, you will tell me 2 things I don't ask about every time we talk. Every time, mind. If I think you are trying to hide anything from me, you will be glad to let Semerhag have you. As you say, my lord dragon, Asmodean stammered. He looked ready to bow and kiss Rand's hand. To avoid the chance, Rand moved to the blanketless bed and sat on the linen sheet, the feather mattresses yielding under him as he studied the spear. A good idea to keep it for remembrance, if not as a scepter. Even with everything else, he had best not forget the Shanshan. Those Damane. If Avienda had not been there to block them from the source. You have tried showing me how to shield a woman, and failed. Try showing me how to avoid flows I cannot see, how to counter them. Once Lanfear had sliced his weavings as neatly as with a knife. Not easy, my lord dragon, without a woman to practice against. We have 2 hours, Rand said coldly, letting the man's shield unravel. Try. Try very hard.
Don't trust him. Yeah, I think it's cool that we see Rand use the blocking a gateway weave that only perhaps Lewis Theron knew. So another one of those leakages, like before we really get the voice of LTT.
I had actually never really caught that before this read-through, that blocking the gateway is like it's a super powerful weave. It's not just like a wedge of air or something.
Yeah, because think about it, like, generally when you let a gateway go, it just vanishes. So he's not just sticking something in there, he's like somehow propping up the female half of the power that's opening this gateway.
And it should be able to cut like anything in theory, because it's not just like a knife, it's like
it's a slice of reality.
Yeah,
he has to hold it open with like just pure Sidene or something.
But yes, so I just finished Warrior of Altai. I felt like I could see like the seeds of a lot of ideas that went into the Wheel of Time. There were certain like phrases here and there, concepts, and even like characters. The wise or sisters of the wisdom are a major part.
Totally, like the wise women and the Altai are clearly the Aiel.
Yeah, and there's definitely some throwaway lines like, well, no reason to dice with death if you don't have to, and that kind of thing. Although I could also tell that, like, it's not that great of a novel, like, as far as, like, how it's put together. I sometimes found myself a little bit confused in the dialogue. Like, it's rough compared to his other stuff.
Sure, and one thing I'll say about it is you have to understand, like, it was written in the 70s, or maybe even earlier. I forget what the original date was. And for barbarian fantasy in the 70s, that is amazing, because that stuff is not logical. Like, things just happen, right? Like, there's so much more logic in Warrior of the Altai. Don't get me wrong, it's no Wheel of Time, but it is probably the best barbarian fantasy book that I've ever read.
I think that's fair. I don't know what other reflections I really had on it. I guess I found myself really wishing that there was just more to it.
It's clear that he was creating a world that could have been a lot bigger. He had the parallel universes going on. He had the portal worlds.
Yeah, with the Wanderers, and when Wulfgar is talking to one of the Most High, the, like, male Aes Sedai type things, and the Most High is explaining to Wulfgar how he's trying to explain it in a way that Wulfgar will understand. He's like, the way the Wanderers end up here is, imagine that there are canals cut into the plain, each next to each other. Some are deep and narrow, some are wide and shallow. They all vary very much and flow at different rates, and sometimes, accidentally, basically, a little bit of spray can fly up from one canal and land in the other one. It's very difficult to control, but that's how that happens. And that seems like the beginning of the idea of, like, the portal worlds.
And that's also why you have, like, people from the future, basically, from modern times, and also people from, like, ancient times coming together, like barbarians and the Wanderers. And the Wanderers tend to be everyone from our modern times to even, like, sci-fi-based technology.
Oh, yeah. He also says they tried pulling things from the portal worlds, essentially, at first, and then like, people showed up with these incredibly dangerous weapons that almost destroyed them, and I also noticed at one point they grabbed a hold of some kind of creature, but it was a force so powerful and dark that it almost pulled them back into their world, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Shaitan.
No, and I'm glad they released it, just because it was fun to read, and it was fun to get an insight into Robert Jordan's thought process. Into his thought process. But I understand why he didn't really want that released. Like, it's clearly an early work, unfinished.
Yeah, it reads like an inexperienced writer's book.
Right. And so, I can see where, certainly from a hubris point of view, as an author, I wouldn't want that out there. But at the same time, I am glad it's out, and I am glad I got to read it, and I am, just because I love Robert Jordan, and I feel like it gave me some insight into his evolution as a writer.
Oh yeah, I see. John wasn't into the idea of reading it because RJ didn't want it read, which I get. Like, it's not a shining example of his work. It's but I guess it's nice to have anything. So I'm just, like, grasping at
Right, but at the same time, like, I sat down and blew through it because I really enjoyed it. Like, I don't really enjoy a lot of books. So, yeah. That's really, I can't, even Robert Jordan's mediocre work is still better than almost anything else authors are putting out. Yeah, Falron says, I got to the end and just wanted to know more about the world. I'm the same way. Like, he very effectively dropped me into a brand new world in one book. And while it has some ideas that he reused for Wheel of Time, it's a unique enough setting that I would have loved to get into it more.
Yeah, it's fun. It would have been cool, to see maybe like Boyhood Wolfgar, or it was kind of interesting, I think, when Wolfgar is explaining to the Wanderer, like, what the brands on his arms mean. He's saying, like, you have to survive in this incredibly dangerous place where there's not enough water for, like, anything, and how, it would have been cool to just flesh that way more out. I would like to see what it would be like to live in the Aiel Waste. I mean, the Plains of Altai.
I'm excited to talk to. I'm going to sit down. Patrick, I don't know if I've told you this yet, but I've been messaging Kate Redding on Twitter, and I said, "Hey, if you guys want to, do an interview, we'd love to sit down and talk to you about why you're going independent."
Yes, that's exciting.
This is for all the times you've listened to like Michael Kramer and Kate Redding reading you stories. Yes, they've gotten paid for doing it, but it's always a flat fee, which is not a lot of money for how popular these books are. But if you want, just go buy this book, whether you want to listen to it or not. Just go support Michael Kramer and Kate Redding.
Oh, I always kind of wondered if they get any royalties for anything, like just having done a lot of books. Like, yeah, well.
No, they do not.
That's understandable from a business perspective. If I was an author, I'd be like, I'm not going to pay you for the rest of your life, man. Just
No, audiobook acting has always been treated much more like a job. Like, you do this work, you get this fee. And the only people who offer you a percentage of sales are the people who don't have any sales.
Yeah.
That's really like, oh, you can narrate my book for a percentage of sales. And it's like, who's going to buy it? You and your mother? So it's a complicated thing, as money always is. Who gets what, when, for why. Not enough goes to the creative people who create the content, by far.
Yeah, well, it's never enough,
Speaking of creative content, I am going to pimp the Lycanus trilogy by James Islington. Yeah, I was just talking about that before recording. Book 1 and 2 I've read. Book 3 is coming out December 10th. It's an interesting sort of time loop fantasy novel where there's this basically appears to be immortal characters that forget their memories and then travel back in time, and there may actually only be one main character. I'm still trying to figure that out. Anyway, it's an interesting, very well written book narrated by Michael Kramer. So if you like Michael Kramer's books, that's a good one. That's why I downloaded it, because I like Michael Kramer, and I was like, oh, another book that looks like a fantasy book. And I honestly love the book. Like, the characters aren't quite as deep as I want them to be. But again, it's only 2 books in, so let's see how he does this third book. But if you want to get into it, the third book comes out in 5 days, so now's probably a great time to jump on it, because by the time you finish book 1 and 2, book 3 will be out. So if you're looking for something new to read, highly recommend it.
Good to know. I am, especially now that I finished Altai.
With the asterisk that I don't know what the third book is going to be like. Oh yeah, I guess we finished recording the audiobook for Sarah Wilson, so we're really excited right now we're just proofing it, going over it, making sure that
a thing that is happening, so that's cool. It's a way for Fox and Raven Media to possibly be a more self-sufficient little company.
Yeah, we're excited. I mean, actually, we've got a lot going on. Broken Earth, spoilers, has definitely gotten off the ground. Aradia has recorded at least 3 episodes, and I've done a first pass edit on them, and I think she's done so those are getting ready and coming out, and Broken Earth spoilers is happening. Just Roll With It is rebooting in the Wheel of Time universe, which I'm really excited to listen to. I'm not actually playing this time, just producing. We got Neil on as an Ogier, which is perfect to take my place. I'm really excited about that. So yeah, there's just a lot. And then, Jordan Con is actually not that far away.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So there's just a lot going down. Planning is starting for SpoilerCon next year.
I was just thinking about that. Thinking about Jordan Con, I feel like it feels like a part of my life now. Like, I can't imagine not going, and I'm like, I feel like I'm already losing track of the amount of times I've gone. Like, this is just a thing that happens every year.
Yeah,
this
it's like 3, the thing right? When it's like, this will be number 3, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
We've been twice before. But it is, like, haven't we always gone to Jordan Con? It feels like we've always gone to JordanCon.
Every year of my life, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Let's go into JordanCon before JordanCon was a thing.
Feels like it.
I wish I had known in the past how much fun that would be. It would have been a really cool thing to do.
Especially when I lived in Virginia, a short drive from JordanCon. I'm kind of pissed that I never went when I lived, I think like it was like a 5-hour drive away. Now I have to fly across the country.
Thank you for listening to the Wheel of Time Spoilers podcast. Rate us in the Apple Podcast app or
support us on Patreon. Is that good enough?